Never in the history of the world have the merchants of obscenity had available to them the modern facilities for disseminating this filth. Disseminating this filth. The onslaught of the communist masters of deceit.
Pinko, Commie, Slutz. Pinko, Commie, Slutz. Pinko, Commie, Slutz. Pinko, Commie, Slutz.
It's Pinko, Commie, Slutz, guys. Hi, we're here. I'm Bunny.
Hello.
It's May.
I'm Steve.
I'm Marlowe.
We're all here. It's the middle of May.
The day after the Ides of May.
What's the Ides of May? What? Let's designate that canonically right now.
I would assume it would be the 15th.
Yes, but
Yeah, no, the Romans were just, stupid and didn't know how to count, so they had to, name all their shit. So they were like, oh, well, you have the dog days, you have the Ides, you have,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my parents recently dug up their fucking weed paraphernalia from the 1970s, so that's cool.
What does it look like?
Well, my dad has this incredibly stupid hookah that there's a famous family tale where my dad was smoking it with his friends because his mom worked and of all the people in the late 60s, early 70s, most of their moms didn't work. So because his mom worked, his house was the den of iniquity. And so they were smoking a hookah at his house. Little did they know, because, why would my dad know this? It was a Jewish holiday, and my grandmother, Baba, taught at a yeshiva. And so she absolutely wasn't working, and just came home from the store to find them smoking out of this goddamn hookah. And she said, you boys need to leave, and Mitchell, I want that lamp put away. So it's this famous story of my family's. And then there's a bong. There's a couple of bongs.
I like that your dad was a famous weed dealer, and that's how your mom...
No, my dad was absolute. Well, that's the other thing is my dad found this fucking lamp of his and texted it to his buddy from high school, and he's inadvertently started this group chat with all his fucking stoner ass dazed and confused friends who all vote for Trump now. Yeah, no, he was absolutely cool, skinny Jewish pothead from Dazed and Confused would be my dad in high school. And yeah, his school, Upper Marion High, apparently did win for biggest stoner school in whatever 1970s issue of High Times was out there, and he won the superlative for biggest pothead, or I think they called it Space Cadet at the time. And yeah, so because it was the 70s, and they're oh, what if we just kids do whatever the fuck they wanted? So the kids got to collectively decide what the graduation ceremony would be. Yeah, so they had an actual superlative given out because my dad just smoked a massive amount of weed, and he was given a shoebox full of paraphernalia in a ceremony in front of his parents. So yeah, that's my dad, and we found his hookah.
Nice.
I've not smoked out of it. Have smoked out of the bong. It's all right. I mean, it's a bong. It's not the best bong ever. It's no roar, as they say. But yeah.
Oh man, we're going into beep beep lettuce territory.
Oh yeah, no, we're taking all of these other podcasts on.
If only we could challenge them to a duel.
Yeah, some bullshit about mids or whatever. I don't fucking know.
I can see Bryn coming on here.
Oh yeah, sure. We got some mutuals on Facebook.
Yeah, I didn't know my parents smoked weed until my dad confiscated some weed from my sister. And this was in the early 2000s. And he was like, the Patriot Act, they'll pull you over for anything. So that was his reasoning, right? And my parents went out of town, and I was like, you know what? I bet he didn't throw that weed away. There's no way my dad, like, whatever, you know. It was like I had suspected, but I didn't know for sure. So I went looking for it, and I found it in a shoebox in his closet, along with his weed, which was trash, and his paraphernalia, which was like a very sad little pipe. Looked like he got it at a gas station. Didn't know even where to go.
Yeah, my mom's got that NJ Med card. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, yeah, no, now it's a whole different thing. This was way back.
Yeah, no, now it's just boomers have made it legal for themselves and only themselves to smoke. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, and they cannot handle this medicinal marijuana. My parents get so stoned.
My parents were actively arguing with me about whether or not Thai sticks were trash. They were, by the way. Because that High Times Best Strains of 1978 thing ran, and it's just a picture of just, and it's High Times, so they like to do their glamour shots of nugs, but it's just a picture of the most trash fucking weed in the world. And so I jokingly showed that to my parents, and they're like, oh, that was all good. And I'm like, nah, it wasn't. and they started arguing with me about this stuff.
Man, look at you with your cool parents.
Yeah, no, my parents rule. This is the best,
I get high with my parents all the time.
Yeah, this is the best getting laid off and having to move back with my parents ever. Oh, man.
I have two separate stories. My mom said that she rolled weed but never smoked it.
Yeah, no, that is...
And that's adorable.
Ever.
My dad said he never smoked weed, but he was really... they went on a honeymoon to Jamaica and told me that somebody offered him weed in a bathroom, and he was very scared of them.
Oh, that's the first time somebody offered me a bump, and I didn't know what a bump was, and I was like, did they just ask me to do heroin?
No, that is actually, heroin is the one being offered drug story that I tell, because generally a story about being offered drugs and you said no is a stupid story, but I was in fact offered heroin once, and I was in a state where I'm like, oh wait, no, heroin. Okay, no, never mind. I'm good.
No, tell the story.
No, tell the story. I was at the docks. I mean, do you remember? Have you ever been to the docks, or had we not hang out at that era? Yeah, there's a place in fucking the bumfuck shore towns of South Jersey towns that I live in, called the docks. There's some docks. Children get drunk there. Yeah, and I don't know, you just would hang out there all the time and drink and do drugs and shit, and then irresponsibly drive home. It was great.
Hell yeah.
In Dazed and Confused, but the 2000s. And someone was there, and they offered me some heroin, and I almost said yes, and then I was like, heroin.
See, it's a commitment. I feel like it would have been too much of a commitment to just, I've definitely accepted a lot of drugs from strangers that I shouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, if you snort it, it's whatever. I mean, that's
but see, everyone
at that point.
My age, everyone's seen fucking Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, you got your Pulp Fictions, your grunge music.
I prefer the real deal, which is Burroughs. Burroughs is my drug.
Yeah, no, I remember your fucking undergrad creative writing samples.
Burroughs wrote the original drug manifesto, Junkie.
He sure did.
Well,
he sure did. He sure did write about having sex with little boys.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. No, that guy was trippy. He was a space cadet.
He was like far out, man.
He was like dazed and confused. I like his character in what was that? The Allen Ginsberg, where he's just sitting in a bathtub with a gas mask on his face.
No, because he was also, I guess, slightly older than the rest of them.
He was like 50, and everybody else was like 18, like freshmen in colleges, and he was like 50 years old and had a bunch of money because his family was like rich. I think his family was related to the Heinz family, or some like
Teresa Heinz Carey.
Yeah, the Heinz family is one of those families.
She married in.
The Heinz family is one of those families that just kind of shows up now and again, and you never hear about what they do, but all of a sudden, Teresa Heinz Carey, William S. Burroughs, I guess.
Well, have you never been to Pittsburgh?
No, I've never been to Pittsburgh.
Oh, you haven't? Because
it
is a big deal in Pittsburgh, and you go to Heinz Field and you see a game there, and literally one of the things, there's all this fucking ketchup shit.
Oh, that
it's like,
awful.
ooh, like fucking key play. Look at this ketchup pour out animation shit.
Any people who are like proud about the neologism they have for bologna should not be trusted.
Look, they got good sandwiches at Parmigiani Brothers, but they love the Stellars.
Yeah.
I try to that Pittsburgh accent's a little different.
Oh yeah, no, we had a heavily Pittsburgh accented chemistry teacher in high school that we all assumed was special because she had a Pittsburgh accent. Yeah.
So I found out his grandfather founded the Burroughs adding machine company.
Okay.
He wasn't part of the Heinz, but he also shot his wife.
He sure did. He's one of those guys who just.
But wait. But did she deserve it?
I don't. I remember reading the story, and it's like, oh yeah, he just kind of got away with murder.
Well, okay. The official story is that it was a William Tell overture scene. That
he was just being a fucking asshole, and he shot his wife, and his wife is dead now.
Yeah, he was doing heroin and was like, "Let's reenact this scene where I shoot an apple off your head."
Who gets manic on heroin though? That's like a manic thing to do. Oh yeah, no, we're gonna do William Tell.
Jazz on heroin.
Plenty of people.
A
lot of people do that.
A lot of people.
Maybe they were playing some jazz, woke them up.
But he
it's a weird heroin caveat. If you don't play jazz, you fall asleep standing up. But if you do play jazz, I guess you can do stuff. I don't know.
John Coltrane is fucking awesome, but he escaped to like Morocco.
Yeah. No, and Naked Lunch.
He really got away with it.
Yeah, that's the whole Naked Lunch thing, right?
Yeah, no, he went to Morocco, wrote Naked Lunch, didn't remember writing it because he was doing too much opium over there, and then came back after publishing it.
Productive on opium. Yeah, I don't.
But you can. I don't know.
What's his face on the road? Kerouac. I understand you did speed. Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
the drug called speed that does the speed thing, like.
And he was driving the whole time.
I understand how you manically write on the road in one sitting on speed. I get that. But, yeah, how do you just do, like, a shitload of heroin, decide...
And then write about, like...
Decide to do
anal sex with aliens.
Yeah, and then write some dumbass fucking book about, getting anal raped by gremlins or whatever. I don't know what that fuguing book's about.
They were aliens, okay? They were called wampums or something.
Wait, what book?
Naked Lunch.
Naked Lunch.
I guess. Yeah, I never.
Yeah, it has to do with lunch, butt sex, and aliens. That's all I know about it.
Oh, yeah. It was like.
And ostensibly, there's this meta plot where everyone is in a prison where they have to eat lunch naked together. I don't know, but that's more of like a framing device rather than.
It was a book left mostly unread by me because I would like go on these jaunts as a youngin'. I'd go to the library and I'd get like just too many books.
Yeah.
So I had like a week where I was like, I'm getting On the Road by Jack Kerouac, etc. Naked Lunch was in there too. We didn't really have the internet.
Yeah, I remember.
For me to like piece it together.
I will say it is one of the better, more Kafka-esque renderings of like the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. He formulates his character, the control addict,
right,
which is the fascinating, the way in which state bureaucracies control like the personal sexuality, kind of break into your house to see what you've been masturbating with, kind of like policing of sexuality that was going on during the 50s and 60s, and then having butt sex with aliens on the side. So, Naked Lunch. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Also, the movie is soundtracked by John Coltrane.
Fuck, I think you showed me the goddamn movie in college.
Yeah, and it's not about the book at all. It's about William Burroughs reading the book.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I know there's like a free zone or some bullshit in it. I don't.
Yeah, Interzone. Interzone is his like dystopian universe where there's like opium dens and addicts and all these metaphorical characters that he finds in the marketplace in Morocco.
Pederasty and butt sex.
No, there's lots of that. Lots of jisms and orgasms.
Yeah. Oh, man.
It was my favorite book when I was 17.
Yeah.
So.
This I know of you.
Oh, God. I'm trying to think of, like, what my favorite book was when I was 17.
Steven, you need to nut up and just send Bonnie some of your short stories from college.
I don't have them. They're lost to the ether of this spiraling history that is changing.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a few plays in college, but they were all, like, weird, like avant-garde things. Like I didn't set out to write something avant-garde, but like my ADD is like this is all I'm going to be able to write, so this is it.
I did the Chad move, which is to have no creative outlets and therefore be unable to be criticized or assailed by anyone.
Oh, beautiful.
Yep.
But it is fun. It is fun to tie up all of your self-worth in your creative pursuit that is also your academic achievement, and realize that utterly
you're worthless.
That like your validation is left up to like people that you don't want to be. like you want to get an A from this teacher, but you're like, this isn't my artistic dream.
All right. I'll give you a little taste of what I wrote when I was 18.
Hell yeah.
I remember writing a short story about living in an apartment in New York and seeing outside my window a poster of the Statue of Liberty, and the Statue of Liberty would come in through my window and fuck me in the ass.
Wait, was the Statue of Liberty wearing a strap-on?
Yes. And it was an advertisement. It was like America, strap on America fucking me in the ass every night.
Yeah, I was alluding to the one where like it was about a police detective who was like going after dealers of a drug that just gave you an orgasm or some bullshit.
I do not remember that at all.
Famous and prominent short story, dude. That was... Yeah, no, you have this whole dystopian... It was kind of a... what's that fucking cell shit rotoscoped movie with Keanu Reeves, that Philip K. Dick novel. It was sort of Philip K. Dickian, except you never read Philip K. Dick, so it was clearly William S. Burroughs. And,
definitely.
Right, and like, it was just... The premise was there was a drug that gave the user an orgasm. That was, I forget everything that fucking happened in it, but that was the plot.
I do remember writing the word orgasm.
You wrote the word orgasm quite a bit in college. I am a long-standing critic and expert and art historian of Stephen Klett's creative endeavors.
I love it. No, see, I don't have. Well, yeah, I could call the girls who were in my little play. Maybe they remember it, but I'm like, nobody else remembers my most well-written play, which was a conversation between Eve and Pandora.
Word.
And it was about feminism. It was not bad. I gotta say, actually, I'm not like I did keep it for a while, and I lost it on a fucking computer hard drive. But I do this thing where every once in a while I'll go back and read something super old, and most of it makes me go, "Oh God, cringe."
Someday we'll dig through the archaeology of the internet.
Yeah. Oh my God! Please find my Pandora and Eve one-act play. It's awesome. I frickin' love it. It's a lot of tableaus. They're like trans-dimensional beings having a sleepover is the play.
Are they like beings from mythology or story?
Yeah, so they are the prototypical women, but
so they're Jungian archetypes kind of thing, or
yeah, but I didn't like, and this is like in the midst of my very deep like theater major minoring in classical mythology self. So like a lot of my takes on ancient Greek mythology, and especially like the plays of Euripides and whatever, are like, no, I individually think X. And both studies, like both the study of theater canonically and like classics canonically, have different ideas about those things. It's like I wanted to do something that was about not just these archetypes in mythology, but also women and feminism and the roles that we're supposed to play. So they were supposed to be like this binary where like Eve had a lot more agency than Pandora did. Like Eve had a monologue at one point where she talked about how she used to be Lilith, and like it's this whole fucking thing. And then like basically it's about Pandora trying to transition into something more independent, and she like in every scene is like a different stereotypical women thing. So it's like it's like best friends at a sleepover. It's women like it's like whatever.
I had the idea to do in the style of a Greek tragedy, a story about David Grohl being visited by the disappointed ghost of Kurt Cobain. I don't know why I keep talking about Kurt Cobain.
Ooh, that would be good, though.
I realized it would require way more study in Greek theater than I was willing to do.
Ooh, but
I had a chorus. I wanted a chorus, and Courtney Love would be in the chorus. I forget exactly.
Oh my God, that would be so
it's rules as a premise. I just am way too lazy to actually execute it.
Oh, I forgot that. So my play, there is a problematic turn because like Pandora's like transitions into like the Hindu goddess Kali with like several severed heads and whatever, and that's like her triumphant end in my play. But I don't know if that's like appropriative now.
Yeah, whatever. Probably fine.
It was fine at the time, guys. And it's not, it's not like the scene's written like the second Indiana Jones, I promise.
बलि चढ़ोगे, बलि मांगती काली माँ, मुक्ति देगी काली माँ, काली माँ, काली माँ.
Holly fucking Mayo. You talk about how basically we shouldn't wear any masks because of something that you thought about what Zizek said.
That's not.
Steve believes that we should not wear masks and that they interfere with our freedom of as Americans. Take on this bold take.
It's not because you're trying to simp for Amber Frost.
Oh yeah, she just had her fucking article.
What's her article?
The headline was, I'm not wearing a mask, and then...
But she is.
2 paragraphs into the article, the sentence, "I am wearing a mask" is spoken. I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing. It seemed sort of a little just purposely, just Amber being Amber. I don't know. Whatever. More power to her. Stan.
It's like she's been on Red Scare one too many times. Which, by the way, if they want to come on here,
Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't have any dignity. Fuck it. Let's get Mike Tracey on. I don't give a shit. Steve, call Mike Tracey.
I would love to have Mike Tracey on.
Get off my head!
He
I
has the same
him,
number
and I'm
he's
like,
had in
"Hi,
college.
I've only heard
I
bad
know
things
he
about
has
you,
the same
Mike
number
Tracey."
he's had in college because he recently signed up for Telegram and I got a notification.
And you got to notice that he was trying to buy drugs.
He signed up for Telegram. I'm on Telegram because my sister lives in England, but
or you're trying to psychonaut, so it'll give you
I
random
sold drugs to Mike
coordinates
Tracey before. I don't give a shit.
to go see spirits.
But yeah,
sold drugs. We got to contextualize this.
no,
Okay.
no, we don't.
For
The point is, I have Mike Tracey's number, and so does Steven, and we could use this power. That's really all that needs to be said. I don't know. Maybe the audience could figure out from the fact that both me and Steven went to college together and we both have Mike Tracey's number, how we might know Mike Tracey. I think you can draw fucking lines through that and figure it out. Oh, gumshoes that are our audience. And also of our audience, a quarter of them went to college with us. So
one day I might get a better job that people want to cancel me from. So people might listen to this in the
you're
future.
going to get Shane Gillis'd.
Just to check. Yeah. Hopefully.
All right. I will never forget Mike Tracey accusing you of utilizing ad hominem
Oh, yeah,
attacks
because
on
I
you.
told him that Religulous by Bill Maher was a shitty fucking movie. And we had an argument until 2 the fuck o'clock in the morning in my fucking off-campus housing with Mike Tracey.
I was sitting right there between you two, between you and
God, he was a piece of shit.
he must not be named, arguing about whether or not the Beatles or the Grateful Dead were better, and you and Mike Tracey arguing about.
I was holding like 3 different simultaneous arguments at once, and I was owning all of them. So yeah, no, that was great times. Fuck the Beatles, fuck Bill Maher. I stand by that today. How many of you can say that you stand by an opinion you held 12 years ago?
Hey,
me, and that opinion was racism is bad.
Last week I did a whole monologue about Axl Rose being an Uber.
Yeah, no, that was cool.
So I think I've held on to my positions pretty clearly, but I want to get back to
why we shouldn't wear masks because Slava Zizek said so.
The mask engenders a third reality, a ghost in the mask, which is not the reality of the face hidden beneath it.
No, this was a news article that came out about France
requiring the mask, but banning the burqa.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that is
which you got to say, Frenchies, you know what?
I was actually just saying how much I wish I was a Franco-Belgian cartoon illustrator so I could just draw racist pictures and go, ha ha ha, je suis la modern Voltaire, as I erase the lips on a black caricature I made to redraw them as larger lips, and talk about how this represents my liberty. Well, but I say liberté or whatever. French are fucking awesome. They just love being racist.
And they love being Islamophobic.
Yeah, no, they just they love it. They fucking love it.
Yeah. Well, you know why? Because I think in the imagination of people about white people, the French are the ones that are supposed to be those cultural white people. So they have this whole story about how everything is from them and they cannot be
also just an insane colonial history with Algeria.
Oh, absolutely. But
what the National Liberation Front in Algeria was able to do was to mobilize newspapers of the left and of the center and to use the sort of publicity machine to excite worldwide attention against torture, against the abuses of civilians.
But I'm saying, like,
which is why Derrida is the best, and so is
fucking Pied Noir. Camus kind of drew the wrong conclusions. Derrida's actually all right as far as Pied Noirs go.
But yeah, no. So they're maintaining the ban on burqas while requiring people to have the mask, which to me has this, like, the burqas, this kind of shielding a person from external forces, and the mask is preventing people from getting a disease that we may all have inside, and basically something ideology and so on and so forth. But French are always going to side on the at least Macron, but neoliberalism is going to side on the Christian hegemonic mask over the Islamic burqa any day because they're racist, but also the racism, but also this weird amorphous vapor of the West and Western culture and like whatever. And it's like, it's always been bizarre to me. I of course understand the Western, all these things, but
the Reign of Terror was basically liberalism being cool as shit for a while, and the French have the legacy of being the coolest liberals who were willing, ready, and able to drown the world in a sea of blood to be the most uber liberals there ever were. I don't know. They haven't really gotten over that no longer being a thing.
I'll put it this way. I love history, but there's moments in history as a youngin' that I was taught in school that I was way more fucking into than others. And the ancient world obviously was a big one.
Is this
but the other...
As in you being young or a youngian?
Not a youngian.
Because it could go both ways with archetype.
It could go both ways, but that's but the French Revolution, everything about that was super fascinating to me. Both. And I remember being like, because of being kind of a more lackadaisical student, and then being like so tuned into the material that the teacher was like, fucking leave me alone. like stop staying after class to talk about the French Revolution. But yeah, so if you were that fucking cool, and then in the modern era you're fucking weird smelly frogs, like, come on.
But okay, but so what's the contradictions within feminist theory about burqas? Because I read multiple perspectives on it, and I'm still not clear where feminists land on burqas, because it seems...
Because feminists aren't clear, that's the thing. Like, feminists aren't clear where, there's no real unified field of feminists on this subject matter, certainly. Like,
is it an oppressive force by the patriarchy on women? Or is it an empowering act by women to establish themselves separate from...
Honestly, I find both of those rationales compelling in different ways. I have a real aversion to anything that makes a modesty argument. I can't stand anything from any culture that has an overemphasis on modesty as a power. There's something I specifically think is a trick about that for women, because it encourages women to weirdly police each other for these signals of modesty. And I feel like it's the same fucking bullshit dressed up like it's sacred and beautiful, and it makes me annoyed because I don't feel the need to respect modesty or choices for modesty at all. that's fine if that is what like turns you on about life, gets you fired up, is being fucking modest and whatever. And I'm actually not a particularly provocative dresser myself. So it's like, I'm not exactly coming at this from a completely opposite, like, oh, let me be out here as some American stereotype of, you know, Chelsea Handler topless for no reason. Even if there is no religious component, if somebody's like, I'm like so fucking cool because I like don't show my body, and like that's different, right? And I oh God, it makes me like, no, it's not. I don't, who gives a shit? But in terms of someone making a choice because it's part of a cultural or religious tradition, I feel like that's different. However, I have a problematic feeling because I kind of, there's a small fucked up part of me that is like, yeah, that's right. Masks are like just a thing now. So now we can all be doing cool mask shit, you know? Whereas, I don't know, I think before you have people being like, ban the burqa, you have people being like, the burqa's beautiful. But also like, if you wanted to play with the idea of covering oneself, then are we getting into a weird appropriative area? And now, oops, no, we're just doing regular masks for safety. You don't have to.
That goes to my point, which is the moralism you see by primarily liberals who are policing people who are not wearing masks and saying you're being a bad person for not wearing a mask because you're morally obligated to wear a mask because it prevents the spread of disease to others, et cetera, et cetera. While the argument about the burqa is the inverse of that. The argument against the burqa is that it's in some ways holding a woman hostage of a patriarchal system, but the argument for it is that it's freeing a woman from the patriarchal gaze. So the Zizekian analysis is that what we fear most is the face, or like the way we construct the face to our neighbors, and Westerners are more fearful of not being able to see their person's face, which then makes them distrust them if they can't see the face. Well, which is a whole kind of other analysis that's more Hegelian about how we recognize the other and how we see the other person interacting with ourselves, and what we fear is this like unknown in a cultural sense. But I don't really ascribe to that as much as Marlowe likes to pin me on that.
Forgive me if I'm mistaken here, but when I hear analysis kind of like that, it sounds reactionary. Like it's reacting to the idea of Islamic face coverings almost always directly. And it's not like there's this very...
I think it's identifying the reactionary ideology is what he's doing, is saying that this is the ideology that is guiding Eurocentric liberalism to reject the burqa.
Yeah, I mean, is that it? Or are they seeking a justification for having an aversion to its foreignness? Because, like, for instance, like covering one's face is different than, say, covering one's hair as a thing, right? But many corners of Islam don't have face coverings as a typical part, but the covering of hair is regular. And it's said for modesty, just as it's said it's for modesty when Hasidic women wear wigs. It's different than covering one's face, but like the discomfort with the practice exists separately than any justifications. Yeah,
I think what this discomfort with the burqa as opposed to discomfort or comfort with the COVID mask kind of embodies this ideology of othering, which is to say that we accept it as long as, therefore, we all must wear the mask. But once it becomes somebody else gazing upon the person, that being the thing that is the unknown, that like is the symbolic representation of an other religious expression, it becomes taboo. That like analysis of it comes from within, therefore it's tolerated, whereas if it comes from outside, it is intolerable. And that, to me, seems significant in the way in which we, in the West, see, the dangers of the other, as in, like, the way in which we should better ourselves is within first, through therapy or through, self-care or whatever bullshit they tell us we need to, like,
treat yourself,
inhabit, as opposed to, like, if you accept wearing a burqa as an expression of your religious, that is where we draw the line, because it is showing something to a larger world.
Well, yeah, and I think it's interesting in the United States how there's like a conflation. The people who like are whole hog, like, this is made up, oh, this shit is bullshit, whatever. They have made this conflation about the masks and burqas and shit very easily.
I agree.
And they're like, it's a liberal. I saw a meme that was like, it's a liberal Chinese conspiracy.
I think that's sort of what I've been getting at with this conflation of the ideology, where it's this liberal. It's the masks are seen as the masks of liberalism, as this ideological moralism that they're imposing on others, which they are reacting to by not wearing a mask. We've talked about it before, but all these like protests against wearing masks, which then spreads the virus even more, and why people would do that. And I think that kind of gets to that rationality. It is a rejection of what they view as liberal moralism being imposed on them.
Yeah, it's also a lot of just... Actually, I don't know if this falls under any fucking Deleuze-Guattari, like, signs and signifiers collapsing bullshit, but it's the general idea of like, the aestheticization of politics, and just everything's a particular signifier of what side you're on.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I'll admit that I started wearing the mask. I made one out of an old t-shirt, mostly not because I was like, oh, I'm sick. I wasn't sick, blah, blah, blah. But I wanted to signal to people that I was like taking it seriously and et cetera. So I like voluntarily wore the mask out before it was totally sort of, and people were like, why are you doing that? Because it kept going back and forth, but I was just, I don't know, it was a
and I mean, meanwhile, again, my
kind of thing.
Parents have Grateful Dead masks, so there's that.
Oh, I got some leopard print ones today, so they finally came. Which, I mean, I hate in this, whatever, but as soon as I saw the forest for the trees that we were going to have to wear masks, I was like, I'm going to get some fucking
Nathan Robinson has a matching paisley mask.
Yeah, matched to the liner of his jacket, because he's Nathan J. Robinson.
The one Slovenian leader, she had a beautiful matching mask with her outfits once this had started. So I also think it's an interesting question about freedom and, well, why is it okay? Like, why is it not okay? These people who have a real problem with the masks, why is it not okay to be told to wear a mask? But a lot of these people are the same people who are totally okay with every kind of business having arbitrary clothing rules for their employees that have nothing to do with like safety, et cetera, that are just like, I'm not a terribly old person, but the amount of jobs I had where they are still like, you're a lady, you got to wear pantyhose when it serves no purpose. It's just one of these old-timey modesty things.
Well, yeah,
the idea is out there. Or the idea is that we don't want to see someone, if somebody got ugly legs, we don't want to have to see it, so we have to make this prescription. There's all this concern about
policing women's bodies.
Show up.
Policing women's bodies is what it comes down to.
So, I mean, also it generally comes down to this insane definition of freedom that explicitly denies any action of private entities as interfering with your freedom. I mean, your employer also dictates when you have to wake up in the morning. That's more intrusive to your day-to-day life than anything the government's ever done. Your employer gets to dictate a ton of shit to you, and they never have an issue with that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I keep coming back to, like, why should these people, defend that? I mean, we know why, but because I've always felt that the encroachment from employers has always been more materially of a tangible thing in my life. Most of my life, I've been somewhat in entertainment, but there have been times in my life where I've buttoned down and had to do this or that job, and they tell me how I can wear my hair, that I have to wear makeup, even if it's got nothing to do, like, I don't care about glamming up for, like, something that makes sense that I would, glam up for. I'm shooting something, whatever. But I've had plenty of jobs that are like, I'm a cashier, and they're like, essentially I'm a cashier, and they're like, you gotta wear makeup to make minimum wage. It's I don't give a shit about people feeling their freedoms encroached on here if they've got nothing to say about those parts.
This brings up the next point that I wanted to talk about was there was a meme going around, social distancing equals communism.
Yeah.
And also I guess term Cuomoism that I've been seeing around upstate New York, which, seems to imply communist for keeping large portions of the state shut down. And I think this gets into a lot of the mythology around communism and the separation of the private enterprises from state apparatuses, whereas any use of force by state apparatuses are seen as Stalinist and therefore communist.
Yeah, except all private property. I mean, that is essence of the pure ideology, is just this delineation that actually is internally inconsistent with itself. Yeah, their entire premise is based around the existence of state force. You can't have private property without state force, and you never could. I don't like using rightist language. However, this whole let me get back to work is seriously, it's the most cucked bullshit in the universe. It is literally,
I know, what
wanting
losers.
It's only being able to be brought to orgasm by watching your wife get fucked by another man. That's all it is. It's the dumbest goddamn thing on the planet. Like, what the fuck? No, stop asking to go to work, you fucking loser. Like, stop it. Now, on the other hand, of course, part of the problem with that is liberalism doesn't have a solution.
Well, look.
And liberalism is not willing to sustain people not working at this time. So,
I mean, it is in Europe. I mean, social democracy in Europe is doing that.
Yeah, to an extent.
But it's not to an extent. The government is taking over 80% of the tab on people's paychecks. But my thought is that this kind of goes back to our, topic we touched on before. I think that the right to work thing, or right to go back to work, is very much a Protestant belief in...
Yeah, no, that is... I don't like that, but... I mean,
I think because...
about this conflation of morality and working, and this idea that you have some form of personal fulfillment that can be solved by selling your labor to a capitalist.
Well, not only that, but if you are getting paid out by the government, then
exactly. You're less moral.
You're a lesser person if you're getting government.
You're less moral, and you have really, at a spiritual level, a lack of some intangible fulfillment. Well, I just have to say, I've said this since my freshman year of high school. It's also very inherent to Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, which, to Huxley's credit, he later disowned that novel.
As any good writer should.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, but the premise is, I feel like there is some version of people like, yeah, I'll sign up for whatever. Just give me the sugar water and the video game system.
I don't want to go too far down this because a lot of those,
no, you should.
A lot of those protests are very much in the purest of ideology, and where I'll disagree with Weber is, I guess, a chicken and egg thing with him. But I think he does describe an interesting interpretation. You can apply it to Marxist superstructure and say the Protestant work ethic actually does provide a basis that aids capitalism. I don't believe capitalism was an emergent quality of Calvinism.
But I think capitalism, the way it exists, it seeks to exist in
Protestant work. I mean, here's my argument against Weber, I guess, would be we've moved beyond Protestant work ethic, and now we have tech bros doing ayahuasca in South America work ethic.
That's because Protestant work ethic became the baseline.
Right, no, my point is.
Well, but there's an.
You can derive that from anything. You can derive that from Burning Man. You have a Burning Man work ethic. You have Silicon Valley bros doing a shitload of drugs and reading the Bhagavad Gita and justifying capitalism through that. You can have any set of religious work ethics. I think that Protestantism as a historic base to the United States general ideology mass, yes, probably there is an undercurrent of that's being applied even to those things. Again, it's mostly a chicken and egg thing with Weber that I have, that he has a very, and I mean, this isn't even anything that Weber himself would disagree with. He's making an idealist argument. He is very consciously making an idealist argument, and he's very consciously making an idealist argument as a challenge to the prevailing Marxist argument at the time. I disagree with him on that, but I think at the same time, his description of Calvinism and how it intersects with capitalism is interesting and might even serve some use in a Marxist analysis.
The other thing I will point out is that these protests, the go back to work, seem astroturfed in a lot of ways by forces. I'm not quite sure what, but they do resemble a lot of Tea Party protests.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
also, conservatives writ large never say,
I mean, you're literally...
or whatever, fall in line. They don't do that.
I mean, they're literally like the kids at school reminding the teacher to assign homework. It really is shut the fuck up, dude. Who wants to go back to work, you fucking loser? Fuck you.
People who have...
Well, yeah, it's got the energy. It's got the energy of what people on the internet say.
Sure.
Pick me, woman. It's got that energy. A pick me woman is somebody who's actually, I love cooking.
Yeah,
and
often called a pick me bitch, but this also might be a good transition to Caroline Calloway.
I wanted to. Yes.
Bonnie wants to defend Caroline Calloway. I am canceling Caroline Calloway at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow.
She's been canceled. She's a phoenix.
I've only seen that Red Scare interview, and I'm ready to throw her off a cliff. So You're surrounded, buddy. You're surrounded.
One.
I just don't like
this is connected
successful
to what we
women.
were just talking about because
fine.
one question. Yeah, clearly, that's what. So they can't be president. This is connected to what we were just talking about because please, everyone listening, question how you value people according to work in general and how someone makes a living and etc. A lot of these things that I think are tied with a Protestant work ethic is there's something in that is very useful to a bootstraps American idealism that is the idea that magically out there, all jobs have someone who, in their heart of hearts, that's what sings to them is that job, no matter how menial, blah, blah, blah,
Right,
it's honest work, etc. And I think with Caroline Calloway, there is a question of honest work, clearly. What is that? If you don't know who she is, she's some white bitch who was an Instagram influencer.
There was
I literally did not know about her till
10-part expose on her.
I'll give the brief version. She was an Instagram influencer. She sold some event experience where she made all these promises. She couldn't get it together. And then she got branded as a scammer. And she kind of freaked out, whatever, went dark and quiet for a while. And then there was this tell-all by her former friend who claimed to have been her ghostwriter for all of her Instagram captions.
And I'm just like reading it going, who the fuck is this person?
To be honest.
And like I have like 3 different Wikipedia pages open and I'm about 3 paragraphs into what, again, it's 1,000 pages long. It's so goddamn long. And I'm like
so
3 paragraphs in and I'm just like, all right, I don't care anymore. And I just went and did something else.
Nor should you, but if you're into nonsense, as I am, I got very into it because some very funny people I know were sort of post-ironically into Caroline Calloway, which made me interested. And then I've come around to I will, in her defense, most adamantly, I will say I believe Caroline Calloway to have a very good sense of humor, and I always appreciate that about someone. And I don't think she's a shitty person entirely. I think she has some self-awareness, and she's funny for who she is, from what I do know. Also, since she's come back on the scene, which she responded to the tell-all, she raised a bunch of money with her response, but she also started an OnlyFans, and thematically it's literature, like heroines of literature, but you see their butt. But it's her, Elizabeth Bennet and the like. So that's caused a bit of controversy in terms of people feel like she's encroaching on this, land of sex work, that she doesn't belong. And I don't know. I think that's pretty silly. I don't think a single person who's just looking to jerk off is like, I'm going to pay $50 a month for Caroline Calloway's fucking Jane Eyre cosplay.
I have a soft spot for Elizabeth Bennet because I loved Pride and Prejudice. Also, Keira Knightley, I will stand till the end of time. But with Red Scare, again, we're really making a hard.
No, absolutely not.
For Red Scare to come on
never
here.
going to watch or listen to anything by Red Scare. Never gonna have. Yeah. I mean, come on the pod, Anna and Dasha. Call Mike Tracey and ask for Dasha's number.
I met Dasha once. I was at the Mark Fisher reading, which Amber was reading at, or she was one of the panelists for the Mark Fisher K-Punk release party. And Dasha saw that I had a K-Punk, and they had run out of K-Punk copies, so she couldn't get her own copy, which she has henceforth gotten. I've seen her, pictures of her having the K-Punk book, but she asked me where I got it, thus bringing me into the circle of friends that she had, which included Adam Friedland. who had a broken nose at the time. And
Sure he did.
No,
Sure.
he really did.
I just have to say, of all of us, I've
Secret
met the
nose
least
job
number of
much?
people from Cometown. At 0.
Yeah, you've met the least. That's the real brag of this episode is that Steve and I have met so many of.
He did have a broken nose. Apparently, I think this was from a fight that he got into with a person in Bed-Stuy.
Who gets into fights as an adult? Like, I'm sorry, what the fuck is that?
Somebody Cometown living in Bed-Stuy, but.
Who looks like Adam Friedland and gets into fights?
Look, has anyone ever heckled you when you were trying to do stand up?
Yeah, no, I remember being like into the tough crowd scene and like being with that like mentality of like, oh yeah, well, I mean, if you're a heckler, like you got to burn their house down and murder their children. Like that's just how it works. Like, I remember, like, being into that, like, fucking, like, stand-up comedian ethics bullshit that they have. Of just, I was absolutely looking from the outside in. But, yeah, no, I mean, it's very similar to, like, baseball unwritten rules, where, like, in baseball, it's like, oh, well, you know, that batter was like a little bit of a douchebag when he hit a home run. So, of course, the next time he steps up to plate, you have to throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball at his fucking head. Like, it's just these, like, rules that, like, within this certain group, they're accepted as, like, these eternal and obviously true rules. But, like, to any normal human being looking in, they're just insane. And no way to run a society or even subculture, I would say.
Anyway, so my embarrassing story is I had just seen Dasha and Adam on Chapo's midterm election coverage that they did, which Marlowe and I both watched.
Yeah.
And
when Matt got shit-faced and had to be replaced suddenly by Dasha.
I was in the middle of telling a story about how I talked to Dasha and Adam Friedland not knowing who they were, but also...
Hell yeah.
Because I had seen them in the Chapo midterm election coverage and asked them if I recognized them from a DSA meeting, and they were very condescending towards me.
That's on brand. Yeah.
It's on brand. They were right to have shamed me. Is what I'm trying to...
No, I disagree.
Yeah, I would say if it was Matt or Amber, they would have been right to be condescending. But if Dasha, has no right. Nor does Adam. They have no right to be condescending.
Look, I can't talk. I grew up with Stav, and he big times me constantly. So
big times you?
Yeah, that's what it's called when you're like, I only have time for you because I'm big time.
When are you going to get him on the pod? Come on.
Fucking never. First of all, he has never even gotten his tooth fixed. So do you think he's got, like, his shit together to do me a fucking favor? No. I love Stav. I did grow up with him. But yes, he does big time me because he makes a lot of fucking money on his fucking Cometown.
He's got his own podcast now, too. Stavi solves all your problems or something like that.
Yeah, well, he also has a sports podcast, I know.
Yeah, he's got a basketball bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of shit no one cares about.
Yeah,
like,
the man's got a fucking Comedy Central special, yeah?
Yeah, I love and support him, for real, Greektown forever, but I can't be expected to consume all of the content he's putting out. It's really not all
stand-up comedy.
Well, I mean, if it was just stand-up, yeah, but I'm not going to, I don't listen to every Cometown.
I do.
There's nothing wrong with it.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
I do because I work at a job where I have 8 hours to just listen to podcasts all day. And
see, I like to listen to podcasts about ghosts and aliens if I've got a lot of time.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So were we vaguely talking about Caroline Calloway?
Yeah, we were, but then we got into other influencers like Stavro Halkias. Okay. One, people think it's problematic that she has this OnlyFans.
She's gentrifying OnlyFans.
Which, just shut up. If you're, I'm sorry, like if you're doing sex work and it's exclusively on the internet, you already are privileged in the realm of sex work. It's not as if those things are accessible to everyone, even though they are accessible to a bunch of broke ass bitches who just need to make a buck, which is fine. And I don't know. I don't think somebody like Caroline Calloway engaging with that stuff at all dilutes it or has a negative effect.
Yeah, it's like the time that like we tried to argue that Miley Cyrus was like appropriating the twerk. Actually, Miley Cyrus is appropriating this like strong New Orleans black indigenous PLC tradition of twerking. That was awesome. That was a great fucking era, and we should go back to it. Yeah.
Paul Ryan's Widow Peak was pretty epic as well, but like
2012 had so many things.
Caroline seems to have what's the communist bent though? That's
well, one, she did support Bernie, so shut the fuck up. She was a Bernie supporter. I mean, when it comes up, she doesn't have bad ideas about labor and etc. She's not an enemy. And I think, who gives a shit? Like, I don't see her harming things in this way. I just think she, for some people, fulfills this role of a certain kind of person that they feel safe to hate and etc. It's very easy to ignore her. Plenty of people have no idea who the fuck she is.
Yeah.
So that's always my thing about a woman that people want to like bitch about, where I'm like, it's way easy to ignore this person. Why would you be so obsessed with criticizing them?
Carol Baskin?
Look, people miss the part where we all were fine with that Carol Baskins killed her ex-husband. What are you supposed to do?
I mean, he was
going to take everything from her.
And also he was rich and fuck him.
Yeah, exactly.
And like he was a creep who like creeped on like some 20-year-old when he was like 50 years old and married. So
he picked her up off the side of the road when she was like 19.
And she was absolutely not a sex worker at the time.
Carol Baskin did not gentrify OnlyFans. I just have to say that.
That's true.
Jacob Wall is also gentrifying OnlyFans, but yous are not ready to have that conversation.
I watched the one interview with the gentrifier of OnlyFans and found her monologues to be droning on and
well, she's a very young person who
vapid. And I understand the objectifying of women in this way where we view things that they say as being vapid and et cetera, but
did you know she was addicted to amphetamine?
I did know, and that was a large part of the reason she was vapid, was she kept talking on and on about the things that she...
That's the most annoying thing on earth.
She comes off significantly less vapid now that she's kicked the amphetamine.
I have an opinion on her now, because fuck that. Like, that's the worst type of drug addict, is the, like, white person going to a prestigious college who manages to get addicted to amphetamines, probably because they were just buying Adderall from someone, and then they just went down.
Which was her drug of choice. She was an Adderall addict.
Yeah, obviously she. Yeah, no, I thought she was. I thought she was like picking up crystal at a fucking Motel 6. No, obviously she was a fucking Adderall.
Well, and we're talking about, and I do want to, for full disclosure for anyone listening, this time that we're talking about that she was having the problem, her father did commit suicide.
I don't care. Then get addicted to Percocet like a fucking normal person. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, like that.
But do you think, okay, no. But the takedown by the best friend, Natalie, right? So are you more sympathetic to Natalie, the less attractive girl who was also white, who also went to the prestigious college, but was too chicken shit to put her own shit out?
I don't care about Natalie. I'm really just judging her on the basis of being one of those fucking people who gets addicted to Adderall.
Oh yeah, well,
you're someone who wanted to do homework so bad you made your heart explode. Fuck you. You fucking piece of shit.
Okay.
So, no, I just want to put it out there. I don't think I would have ever even gotten into Caroline Calloway if her friend had not tried to take her down in this way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's the first time I've ever heard even the concept of Caroline Calloway. And then, when Caroline Calloway reemerged on the internet, I didn't realize it was the same person.
It's a real, when the Laguna Beach was popular situation for me. I don't give a shit about this, but if you're going to make me care about it, I'm going to be on the side of this bitchy girl and not that one.
It's Streisand effect.
I want to discuss the role of ghostwriters in capitalist economies.
Also, the idea of a ghostwriter of capitalism on Instagram is so endearing.
Yeah, that actually is hilarious. I won't give you that.
It made me want to just hold him in my arms.
How the fuck do you get addicted to Adderall and still need a ghostwriter? What about that? You're on Adderall. Fucking write your own shit manically. Unless you're a champion and you only use Adderall to play Super Mario Brothers 3 on an NES emulator and then masturbate.
Okay, let's pull out this lens. Caroline Calloway, paid for 40,000 subscribers when she joined Instagram as an influencer.
I hate that so much.
And bought her way into her own fame and then used other labor to continue that fame, or at least maintain that fame.
I see that argument, but I just think once I got tuned into the actual facts of the matter, I was like, am I really going to lay this all at the feet of essentially a 20-year-old girl? She just got fucking lucky.
I've angrily justified the Bolsheviks killing 13-year-old Tsar Nicholas's kids, so I'm completely willing to throw children under the bus to prove a point.
I got you, but I'm just saying I think there's something suspicious about people acting like they're making a labor argument. I feel that people seek out a certain woman of a certain privilege that they feel safe laying out these fucking things on.
It's also gentrifying Instagram. The difference being that no one gives a fuck.
OnlyFans.
But how absurd is it to talk about gentrifying any digital space?
It's kind of stupid.
Okay, wait a second. I got Baudrillard in my hand he's got levels of simulation within this. And what you're talking about are, how dare you talk about people gentrifying or acting as the spaces within hyper-reality are places in which work and labor are to be argued about. And the hyper-reality, has existed as a space for capitalism to produce things since at least the late 80s. At least maybe the mid 80s. But the advent of the internet has increased this need for production that, in my mind, Caroline Calloway exhibits this popularity for popularity's sake and using others' labor to continue the production of her popularity, and her buying people's followers as part of that popularity feeds into this idea that she is one of the hyper-real. She is working on this hyper-real level of production, which her value is only valued in a hyper-real sense. And her OnlyFans, or her gentrification of OnlyFans and gentrification of digital spaces, is working within, to use the Luzin Guattari, is deterritorializing digital spaces for capitalistic means, which is what capitalism has done in the last 40 years, which is territorialize every space it possibly can to extract as much money as it possibly can. And I see Caroline Calloway absolutely being like the best at doing that. She is absolutely like bought her way into being.
I don't think she's that wealthy though. I think she's not fucking like Paris Hilton, and this whole thing has been projected onto her a little bit. Where I'm not denying that she has. This
I'm not saying that she's Paris Hilton. I'm not.
But I'm not saying you are. I'm saying some of the criticism goes right there. They like paint this picture of her as if the amount of fans,
it's the being
like that she quote unquote
famous issue that like was most associated, with Paris Hilton and the Kardashians. This whole like idea of you're famous because you're famous.
Those people had lots of money and or prestige in there. It's not as if Caroline Calloway comes from like that level.
She went to Harvard though.
No, she went to Harvard. Didn't she? That was
no. But I'm saying like she's not an heiress.
Yeah, fair.
Like I'm not.
Remember when Paris Hilton started her vanity record label called Heiress Records?
Yes.
That was cool.
Yes. Oh God. See,
the idea of her being like a rags to riches thing also.
Oh no! But I don't think she ever claimed that either. She did say once that
it's a pretty unstable empire. I mean, it's like very late Austro-Hungarian.
Yeah, she's kind of. I just do find it funny that she did once say that she built her way out of the upper middle class.
That's awesome. Actually, no, that rules. Fuck it, I love her.
She fucking
that's actually cool as shit.
She's trying in this weird way, but it's clumsy, and there's something that I will admit, like I was completely unaware of her, and then some funny people on the internet who find her
it's sort of
ironically
like
then post ironically
thing where like now it's cool to be into professional wrestling. Like she's basically.
I'm a stand-up comic. That was always
it was cool since the like mid to late 2000s. And then after that, like we all like rediscovered the fucking Bret Hitman Hart Wrestling with Shadows documentary at the same time on Netflix. And like then we all got into professional wrestling. Mountain Goats dropped the fucking album.
Mountain Goat. Big one.
Anyway,
so you're saying this is like the girl version?
This is like if the Kardashians re-happened, but in 2020, and you now have this whole fucking postmodern like new sincerity thing, and now like the coolest people actually like the Kardashians or whatever the fuck, because it's like. Yeah,
that's
it's
me.
Like how I defend Nickelback because
that's
fuck
my
you.
biography.
Nickelback rules.
But also, I'm not arguing that she's a bad person either. I'm arguing.
No, you're not.
I'm arguing that she is working within the incentives that are given to her. She is doing the best at it.
Yes, and I think she's somewhat aware of it.
While adding also like no value. Like she is really good at adding zero value to
net neutral.
Like net neutral to any of
she got jobs to like people in East European bot farms to like give her 40,000 followers.
Look.
She bought off bots.
No, and there's a man who's working there. There's a man who like took that bot money and fed his children from it. So you got that.
I like this neo-libertarian.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I got one of those like headaches where like it can be solved if I get like a solid 8 hours of sleep, but like I'm never going to do that.
Caroline Calloway, come on.
Yeah, sure.
Podcast.
We'll stand
We're not going to do anything
sign up for your
you,
OnlyFans and jerk off to you out of solidarity or something.
I looked at all the nudes she put up just on Twitter, which, FYI, go to her Twitter.
Yeah, I know there is.
Pinned.
It's her fucking pinned tweet.
She thought her word count was one thing, but it was another. So she apologized with a full nude.
Right.
Which I don't know.
She okay, so I alluded to it, but like also no one gets this reference but me. Yeah, my favorite like leftist Twitter lawyer, which is like a subgroup of posters, basically for whatever reason decided to get in a fake beef with her. And like she kind of like she like played a rhythms. It was pretty good. Yeah, she like actually is pretty good at posting. I don't
in a totally fucking, like, I've smoked too much pot, completely meta, like, technically I was an art student way. I do think there's something interesting about thinking about how someone uses the medium available to them to make things rather than
that's called
our traditional
material conditions. Those are material conditions.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, is there a place in the future where we're looking at what a Caroline Calloway produces and we're looking at it from the lens of, oh, she had X, like, instead of these oil paints or these paint brushes or whatever, she had these apps. like I just think that
she's the Michelangelo of posting. That's cool.
Not such.
No, she is like literally laying on scaffolds for like 14 hours a day for like 3 years straight to like post this fucking hard.
If you want to know about Michelangelo, why don't you guys just watch Nanette?
Well, we could
anyway.
Fucking Ninja Turtles.
Her new special is coming out soon, I think. So we should definitely put a pin in that. In the future, we'll do a Nanette / the new thing. If you guys don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about, apologies.
I know them as words I've heard on the internet before.
Oh, you know
I've never watched Nanette.
You should watch Nanette. It's worth it. It's worth it to know what the fuck it is. And it's not funny. Don't believe Nick Mullen.
Nick Mullen has like a hatred of Nanette that goes beyond.
It's a basic bitch stand-up comedy fucking opinion. It's the fucking stand-up comics who pride themselves on, oh, I can only fucking do stand-up comedy, not all of this other arty fucking farty shit. Like, it's that guy who thinks it's the most
about anything. So,
well, obviously, I just knew he's one of them, and it's this thing where, okay, as a stand-up comic, it was a very trying time for us when Nanette came out because I do have a theater background, but I've been doing fucking stand-up for 10 years. I'm not
2018, so Louis C.K. was
whatever.
very recently canceled, which was like the 9/11 for comics. No one was the same after that.
So Nanette was this incredibly polarizing thing. It was insane.
I'm not listening to an Australian accent for like.
She's New Zealand. I'm. It's worth it if you fucking like theater. It's not a bad piece of art. Whether you want to run it by the metric of what is stand-up comedy, quote unquote, by an American standard, it's very typical in the style of like fucking Commonwealth comedy.
I hate Commonwealth,
which I'm probably more familiar with. Well, look, I'm fucking Canadian. I can't help that. I'm a little more okay with it, but I think Hannah Gadsby's a brilliant comic. She's not funny. The fact that Americans aren't aware of her, she's obviously sold out the Sydney Opera House in the recording, but people in America are like, I don't know who she is, so they think this is like her first foray into things and not like sort of a semi-experimental piece. Anyway, I mean, go down swinging. You just have to go right,
and I mean, also for the record, like, what's his fucking face? Neil Brennan basically did the same thing with his 3 Mics tour.
Except,
sure,
lamer. Whatever. It's not, you can't compare the like gravity of those if you watch them both in reality. But you have to, I just need to put it out there as a stand-up comic who's a woman in the context of when that came out. Someone got so angry at me for saying that, hey, I thought it was funny, but perhaps everyone didn't relate to it. It didn't resonate with everyone. That's all I said. And someone got so angry at me for saying that. They called me. They said it was just like the woman who got kill.
Seriously,
so I just
stand-up comics are the most thin-skinned, horrible, pussy fucking people.
Very fun.
In any field. They are like just literally anything. It's like, oh, you were like on your phone at my show. That's basically the Holocaust. Like, they're the worst fucking people in that regard.
I will say, as one of these scumbags,
I'm talking about you specifically.
It's not as if we're en masse. Yeah. It's not as if we're en masse the worst. It's that the ones of us that traditionally do well are the worst.
I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier.
Super talented.
Like, super into the whole, like, fucking tough crowd, like Patrice, Louis C.K., Colin Quinn, all those fucking...
I love Colin Quinn. I will never criticize him.
I will.
He's a very nice man.
Absolutely criticize his fucking, like, God Bless America show or whatever the fuck. Which I had a free seat at the filming.
Oh, that's right, you did. I loved Long Story Short.
Yeah,
so I try to like see what he's putting down.
Yeah, no, it's just like a fucking boomer going like, "Oh, liberals and conservatives, ain't that something?" For like 90 minutes, you know, it's whatever.
If it becomes available soon, you should definitely watch Nanette and her subsequent special. It will definitely be good podcast material because it'll definitely. Yeah, no. You should, because I think there's an interesting conversation there to be had about.
Like, yeah, I'll watch it. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like, I take issue mostly because I'm an asshole with the idea that Hannah Gadsby is some kind of humorless bitch. When she's quite funny. And it's this thing where because she dared to fucking mix up the framework of her special, and it was something that made people feel a little bit more emotional than they were expecting, they got so mad. And I'll never not be delighted about how mad they got. But I think it's worth it to see how you feel about it. She's not even just new. She's from Tasmania. She's a fucking
devil.
Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
Guys, we have gone super long.
One guy said I have one of those headaches and it sucks.
It's the 20th anniversary of Oops, I Did It Again, and Comrade Brittany is out and posting.
Yeah, leave Brittany alone, etc.
Leave Brittany alone. She's wearing red in that video because she's a communist. Also, please, Matt, put the song in.
Yeah, let's get sued by Britney Spears. Let's get sued by people.
I love Brittany.
We become popular.
Brittany would never sue me, one, because she's trapped and I don't think she can do anything by herself. Two, she would appreciate that when I was younger, many people felt I looked like Britney Spears to a ridiculous degree, which I did not entirely agree with, but I was like, okay. There was a small child at Six Flags who did have Down syndrome who thought I was Britney Spears when I worked there.
A year-long period
that's
after
my get out of jail
came out that everyone thought I was Zach Galifianakis.
I remember. The bouncer. I remember the bouncer.
I was getting into a bar. The bouncer pulled me out of line to say I looked like Zach Galifianakis. And then I was at the same bar the next week, and he pulled me out of line to say, "Are you the person that I pulled out of line last week to say you look like Zach Galifianakis?" I said yes, and he said, "Just checking. I don't need to see your ID." Yeah, no, it was a fucking. I got accosted by the people who sold weed on the corner of my apartment in Washington Heights, who made me take a picture with them because I looked like Hangover Guy.
It was the Continental Bar.
No, it was the Continental. It was in East Village. East Village. Yeah,
East Village.
Doesn't exist anymore. Their most famous thing was like they had some like 10
6 shots for $12.
Yeah, it was some number of shots for some number of dollars. They had it on a sign.
It was a place where NYU students went to get drunk on Friday night.
A fucking nightmare of a place. One of the bouncers looked like Slash.
Absolutely, he had a top hat.
Yeah, no, he wore a Slash stovepipe. Like he was intentionally attempting to look like Slash. It wasn't like me looking like Zach Galifianakis. It was that just comes from having brown hair, a beard, and being fat. This guy.
This is getting to our Axl Rose discussion. I want to add.
Marlowe's got to go. He already revealed too much about himself and what he looks like.
I'm gonna smoke my mom's
I will also say that I was not attempting to actually look like Britney Spears. I just have a face that resembles her, and I was blonde for a time. I periodically am blonde, but that's why I think Britney Spears would never sue me. Also, I would free her, absolutely.
Free Britney Spears.
From the prison that she lives in. I would free her and her young boyfriend, who are seemingly both trapped in this weird palace. She burned down her gym. Guys, check on Britney. This has been Pinko Commie Slutz. I'm Bunny Femalist. You can find me on Twitter at Bunny Femalist.
I'm Steven. at Pinko Steve and Marlowe's.
Yeah, Marlowe.
Not shrouded.
I'm Marlowe. Have a good night or whatever.
Look, join our Patreon to send Marlowe a care package at his parents' house.
I'm gonna smoke my mom's bong.
Bye. Goodbye. And
goodbye.
I think I did it again. I made you believe we're more than just friends. Oh baby, it might seem like a crush, but it doesn't mean that I'm serious.